Hi guys, welcome to Let's Get Real. Thank you so much for joining me today. So my name is Michelle and today we are going to be talking about the difference between being cheap and being frugal. I think we use the terms interchangeably, but there is really a big difference. So some of you may already be aware that I am currently at the beginning of my financial independence journey. And what this means is that I am constantly looking for ways that I can retire at a much earlier age than what the government recommends, which is like 68 or 100. And what this really means for me also is the fact that I'm now having to reflect on my relationship with money. I'm having to look at how I spend my money. And this has also got me thinking about some of the things that I do, all in the spirit of saving money and being cheap. I almost used to wear being cheap as a badge of honor. But I have come to the conclusion that being cheap really is not a good thing. It's much better to be frugal, and that's what I aim to do now. So I now understand that cheap people see with their eyes the price of things, whilst frugal people, on the other hand, see with their brains the value of things. So if you are being cheap, you are trying to save money in the short term, but frugal people are trying to save money in the long term. Therein lies the difference, and it's a massive difference. There are some things that are more important than money. So things like your time, things like your health, things like your relationship, and even the environment would be things that I would class as being more important than money. And a lot of the times when we are being cheap, we are actually sacrificing these things for short-term gain. Let me give you some examples of the type of things that I'm talking about. I used to be that person who would drive past a petrol station to go to other petrol stations to make sure that I'm getting the cheapest price of petrol. I used to be that person who would come out of my house, get in my car and drive to a shop because I know that they reduce items at a particular time to make sure I get them at a reduced price. Now, there are a couple of issues with the examples I've just given you, and I know lots of people do it as well. And, if it's working for you, fantastic. But then I realized, number one, the time that it's taken me to drive to go to buy petrol, the fact that I'm actually wasting my petrol to go get cheaper petrol. The third thing is the amount that I'm going to be saving is actually not even worth saving. If fuel was, say, £1.05 at one petrol station, I would drive past that one, drive for another 3-4 miles to go to somewhere where it's £1.03. Really, by the time I fill up, say I put in 40 litres as an example, I've saved 3p, that's £1.20. Was it worth me wasting the time, the petrol, and just to save the £1.20? And also the fact that I'm having to drive the car to go over there, well, that also means that I'm adding to the wear and tear of the vehicle. So the more miles I do on it, then the closer I'm taking the car to needing a service and probably breaking down. When I consider these things, I think to myself, was it really worth doing? Probably not. So don't get me wrong, guys, I'm not trying to come across as being holier than thou. I'm not trying to say that being cheap is necessarily completely bad. Everybody likes to save money, but we need to make sure that we are being cheap for the right things and in the right places. If it's impacting on our health, our relationships, our mindset, then there is a problem. The first thing that I wanted to look at when we're being cheap is our mindset. The first point is, when I was being cheap, I was in a position where I was fearing that money isn't going to come to me. Cheapness comes from a fear of lack in the future. So if you are frightened that you are not going to have enough, then that's when you want to start holding on to what you have because you think you're not going to get any more. That's not the right mindset to have. So we live in a big world and there is enough for everybody. There is an abundance. Everybody can get enough of the earth. So if you are in the mindset that you are not going to have enough, well, guess what? You're not going to have enough. But if you put yourself in the frame of mind that you are going to get enough, then you are going to have enough because that's what you are going to focus on. We need to check our mindsets. You need to make sure that if you are a cheap person, you are cheap for the right reasons because what you are buying is valuable and it's at a reduced price, great. If you are buying it because you are in fear of you not having enough in the future, but then that's something that you need to address. So aside from your mental health, we should also be looking at the physical health. So if you are the kind of person who only buys cheap food, So you don't really care about the nutritional value. You just know this is the cheapest option and that's why I'm going to eat it. It's going to save you money in the short term. But what's the point in hoarding money when in 10, 15 years time, you're not going to live to enjoy the money? So the third thing that I would also like to mention that could have an impact if you are being cheap is your relationships. Relationships are obviously very important. If you are the sort of person who goes out with your friends, but you expect everybody to buy you drinks, but you cannot buy them drinks in return, then of course you're going to be known as that cheap friend that nobody wants to go out with. If you have lots of money and you're by yourself, what are you going to do with it? What really makes life exciting is being able to share experiences with other people. So you just want to be mindful that if you are being cheap, it's not to the detriment of your relationship with your friends and your family. Number 4 is time. And time is arguably the most precious asset we have. If you are going to be undertaking a task, so if you're going to be doing something that's going to take you 4 or 5 hours, but you're actually only saving £5, £10 or $10, whatever currency you use, then there is a problem. Effectively, you do not value your time. If you are only going to be saving a meager amount in comparison to the time that you are going to be spending, then it's not worth doing. So what I have heard people suggest doing is if you said to yourself, my time per hour is worth, say, £10, £15, for example, if whatever you are doing is not going to either make you that amount of money or save you that amount of money, it's not worth your time. Number 5, it's no surprise, usually when we buy cheap things, they don't last very long, they break down, we have to repair them more often, or we need more of them. So you've probably come across the saying, buy cheap, buy twice. This is because when you buy cheap things, they tend to break down very quickly. Have you ever been to a shop and there was a sale and you had no intention of buying anything in the sale? You went in for a particular item and you walked back out with 10 items that you did not intend to buy. What was the reason? Because it was cheap. Whatever the items are probably are not going to last very long because they're cheap. They're cheap for a reason. You probably wash them once or twice and then they've fallen apart. You have to go back and buy some more. Longevity is definitely an issue when you are buying cheap. I'm not saying that more expensive things are always better quality. When you spend more money on something, you will look after it better. Has anybody noticed that? I noticed that when I spend money on something and it's cost me quite a bit, I will look after it like my life depends on it. Finally, I would say we need to consider the environment when we are being cheap. When we buy items that are not of very good quality, the effect of it is that we have to throw them away quite often. And ethically, I don't know, some people might not see anything wrong with this, but it's just something that I think we should bear in mind. To round up, guys, I would say being cheap is spending less money, even if it sacrifices on time and quality, in order to save money in the short term. I would say being frugal is about budgeting and prioritizing your spending so you can actually have more money to do things that you need to do in the future, and you can use that as a roadmap to arrive at whatever your destination is. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please let me know in the comment section below, what did you think? Do you agree? Are you a cheap person? Would you say you're frugal? I would appreciate if you can also hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed already, please also subscribe. If you know anybody who needs this information, who needs to see this video, if you know anyone who is cheap and you don't know how to tell them that they're cheap, it might be worth you sharing this video with them. Thank you so much, and I will catch you in the next video.